Do you ever have those films you saw many years ago that you remember a key image from, but can never place? Then one day you find that film and it's not quite what you thought it was. I had it, for example, once with a film I remembered seeing about martial arts kangaroos. Later to find out it was the kind of fun but not great Warriors of Virtue. But perhaps that's a story for another video. I had it too with what I would later find out is the 1994 Scotland set film, Dragon World. I had a very vivid memory of a large green dragon appearing from behind a hill. Nothing else but that image of a creature lumbering over a hill, pretty spectacularly, was burned there for years. And then I saw it again recently and it's not a good film. The image in my head was way more impressive than it actually is in the film, and the dragon isn't green. But it did get me thinking. As film creatures go, the dragon is one of the more enduring and impressive beasts of cinema history. They really do stick in the mind. Throughout the history of the world itself, so many cultures have their own version of the dragon. So when we talk films, what makes a good dragon in them? Like anything with film, it's hard to come to an objective conclusion to a question like that, and I certainly am not going to make a list of the best. More just discuss what I feel really matters when it comes to having a dragon on screen make the most impact. Physically, narratively, and perhaps most importantly for the audience, emotionally. For a start, any monster needs to work within the context of its own story. Pete's dragon, Elliot, is fluffy, or in the really not very good original, goofy. He's the friend of a child, so needs to be lovable, if still worryingly dangerous enough to inspire fear in adults. He's basically a dog, with flashes of misunderstood violence. He does maybe lack a sense of physical presence perhaps, his slightly cartoonish look not quite fitting the earthy tone of the film, but they really got right the fact that the creature needs a sense of character. He feels like a beast with history, with personality, and that's important whether it's a friendly or a terrifying dragon. Reign of Fire has some of the most impressive dragons committed to celluloid, hulking aggressive beasts that inspire believable fear into their prey. The reactions of those around the creatures are what sell them, and the general production design. You see something like this, you wonder what the hell they're keeping out. The way characters act when one is even nearby makes us really feel that sense of just how overpowered these world enders are. If anything, the only thing letting down Reign of Fire is that the film around the dragons is pretty weak. It's a bit of a slog to get through, and you simply don't care all that much whether the human characters die or not. Much of the way you give a monster in film power is by how those human characters around them have been developed. If I don't care if the humans die or not, then how will I ever truly feel the impact of this terrible beast? This also goes for caring about a good dragon too. How to Train Your Dragon works so well because you care for Toothless and because you care for the humans. Impact though is an interesting word. For impact, you need weight. Physical weight. And that's what many on-screen dragons kind of lack. These things are gigantic, for the most part, with wings so large they should create real force when they beat. You not only need strong effects work on the creature themselves, but need to see that they're affecting the environment. As effects get cheaper to pull off, every other direct-to-video fantasy effort these days seems to have a dragon. And whilst arguably they don't always look that bad, they're undersold by the lack of weight, the intense force one would expect from a creature like this. I saw that force recently in Game of Thrones. The flames hitting the ground felt heavy, the movement of the beast in the frame giving a sense of its really being there. In a similar way to how the Battle of the Bastards made hand-to-hand combat feel truly visceral, so did this episode make me feel an honest-to-God sense of destruction. That's something brilliantly on display in the Hobbit trilogy. Of course, Smaug is incredibly impressive, a much more effective talking dragon than the ones, for example, in Dragonheart and Eragon, but it's that sense of physicality that really defined him for me. They're not great movies, but he was, for me, very memorable. Smaug moves at times in a lithe, snake-like manner, while still feeling incredibly heavy. And the sequence where he attacks from the perspective of the townsfolk gives a real sense of what it would be like to be amongst the desolation wrought by this most terrible of calamities. The camera can barely contain him, the fire roaring through streets, demolishing anything in its path. It's breathtaking and by far, for me, the most noteworthy part of the trilogy. If physicality is what really sells a dragon for me, then of course, I'd be remiss not to mention Dragon Slayer. and its go motion creation, Vermithrax pejorative. The handcrafted feel and distinctly horrifying look lend her a timeless quality, and the dark, fantastical landscapes she inhabits feel earthy and real, and she, a natural if terrifying part of them. Perhaps in these quick flashes, she may appear obviously dated. It was 1981 after all, but they put so much effort into making her fit the world around her that within the context of the film, by the production design, the respect and fear she demands from the characters, and of course, never better animation of this type, she is a magnificent piece of work. Her ancient feel, that there are stories yet untold of her, lends an intriguing sense of history. She is an undeniable part of this well-formed universe, past and present. I would expect that many filmmakers who have successfully translated their own idea of a dragon to the screen were in some way inspired by Vermithrax. Obviously I've gone over a lot of points, and there are many dragons I've not mentioned here that deserve to be revisited, and I hope more to be seen that inspire dread and joy for generations to come. I love the dragon not only for their history, but that their mythical status in the end allows every filmmaker to imprint their own ideas into them. They don't all have to use what I've said here, it's just that these are the things I feel really stand out in the best dragons I've seen. Each, for better or worse, was distinctly personal to those bringing them to the screen. They can tell so much not only about the story they're a part of, but the storyteller behind them. So for me, the greatest dragons are just the ones that clearly have had time really spent on who those creatures and then characters are.